January 2026 isn't even here yet, and still, grocery store shelves across the US are already looking thinner in ways most people didn't see coming. This isn't happening with flashing alerts or official announcements. It's unfolding quietly, aisle by aisle. According to data pulled from more than 400 grocery locations nationwide, 10 everyday products have already seen inventory levels fall anywhere from 35% to as much as 80%. No warning signs, no purchase limits posted, just less product showing up week after week. What makes this especially surprising is what isn't disappearing. This isn't about eggs, milk, or fresh meat. The shortages are hitting items most shoppers barely think about. Things that feel safe and ordinary. Vanilla extract, jasmine rice, frozen vegetables. The core ingredients people rely on to cook simple winter meals without a second thought. Behind the scenes, some retailers have quietly reduced purchase orders. Certain suppliers have placed hard caps on how much they're willing to ship. And a handful of products are already projected to run out entirely before the end of 2025, long before January 2026 even begins. So what's driving this? A perfect storm. Seasonal factory shutdowns, extreme weather disrupting farms, energy prices driving production costs higher, and perhaps most important of all, major exporting countries are tightening shipments to protect their own domestic supply. In this breakdown, we're going straight into the 10 most unexpected grocery items that could vanish before January 2026 arrives. And fair warning, numbers 2 and 1 are products nearly every household uses every single day. Number 10. Premium coffee beans. Coffee is more than a caffeine habit. For many people over 50, it's one of the last calm rituals left in an otherwise unsettled world. The soft grind of the beans, steam curling up from the cup, that familiar smell filling the kitchen. It's a quiet signal that the day is starting, even when everything outside feels unpredictable. That routine, however, is about to face a disruption most shoppers haven't noticed yet. The global coffee supply isn't just tightening, it's breaking down in very real ways. Brazil, the backbone of Arabica coffee, recently suffered a devastating drought farmers described as the scythe from the sky, wiping out massive stretches of coffee trees. When the drought finally ended, relief never came. Instead of rain, frost moved in, and frost kills coffee plants faster than heat ever could. Elsewhere, the damage keeps stacking up. In Ethiopia, floods have erased entire growing zones. In Colombia, landslides have blocked mountain roads, trapping full shipping containers of coffee for weeks at a time. Across Central America, ripe coffee cherries are being left on the branches because there simply aren't enough workers to harvest them. Farmers are watching crops fall to the ground, unable to fight the timing or the economics. At the same time, global shipping costs continue to rise with no signs of slowing. In many cases, the coffee exists. It's sitting in bags, sealed in containers. But there's no efficient way to move it to roasters. And as winter approaches, when consumption spikes and moods dip, the first products to vanish won't be bargain blends. They'll be the premium offerings. Single origin Ethiopian beans, light roast Kenyan coffee, small batch Colombian varieties. The reserve line's longtime drinkers don't just enjoy, they identify with. The concern isn't whether coffee will disappear entirely. It's whether people will be forced to drink something unfamiliar after relying on the same flavor for 10 or 20 years. Anyone who's lived long enough understands this. Some habits aren't interchangeable. At a certain point, they stop being preferences and start becoming part of emotional balance. This isn't about stockpiling crates of coffee like it's an emergency shelter. But if your morning depends on one specific bean, one exact aroma, one familiar taste, keeping a few extra sealed bags stored in a cool, dry place isn't overreacting. It's preserving your routine before prices enter what analysts expect to be the sharpest coffee surge in years. No one gets to choose your coffee for you, unless the market does it first. Preparing now simply keeps that choice in your hands. Number 9. Jasmine and basmati rice. When a basic staple quietly turns into a luxury. There's something unusual about rice. Most people don't think about it at all. No one pauses midday and says, "Thank goodness we still have rice." It's invisible until the bag runs low. That's when its importance suddenly becomes very real. I once heard a story from a Thai aunt about her first years in the US during the 1990s. She arrived with a single small bag of jasmine rice, As it slowly emptied, she stopped cooking freely. Portions became measured, half a cup at a time. Not because she was rationing money, but because she wasn't sure she'd ever find that same rice again in American stores. She told me something I've never forgotten. When you don't have the rice you grew up with, it doesn't feel like home anymore. 3 decades later, that story is resurfacing, but for a different reason. This time, it's not about limited imports or unfamiliar grocery aisles. It's because the global rice supply itself is under pressure. India has extended export restrictions for another year, pulling tens of millions of tons of jasmine and basmati rice off the world market. Thailand has been hit with weeks-long flooding. The Mekong Delta, the heart of Southeast Asia's rice production, is experiencing the worst saltwater intrusion ever recorded. Meanwhile, U.S. farmers are shifting away from rice altogether, choosing soybeans instead because they're more profitable and less exposed to weather risk. Then there's China. When a country of nearly 1.5 billion people places massive rice orders to secure its own supply, the entire global market tilts instantly. There's an old saying traders repeat: when China buys, everyone else waits. Your audience already knows this isn't theoretical. They're seeing it firsthand. In some U.S. states, jasmine rice has completely vanished from shelves. In others, prices have jumped sharply, while only lower-grade blends remain. One shopper summed it up perfectly. "I've eaten this rice for 40 years. Do I really have to change now?" That's not an easy question to answer. You can't ask a South Asian family to replace basmati with generic long grain any more than you can ask an Italian household to swap spaghetti for instant noodles. Food isn't just fuel, it's memory, identity, comfort. But here's the honest part. If jasmine or basmati rice is a daily staple in your home, keeping an extra 5 to 10 kilograms on hand isn't panic buying. It's practical preparation. Properly stored rice lasts a long time. And when the market tightens further in the early weeks of 2026, you won't be forced into frantic store-to-store searches just to find the grain you've eaten your entire life. Rice doesn't only feed the body. Sometimes it feeds memory. And memory isn't something you want to lose simply because the global supply chain is slowly unraveling, one quiet disruption at a time. Number 8. Vanilla extract, the smallest bottle with the biggest sting at checkout. If there's one ingredient quietly transforming from a casual baking add-on into a genuine luxury, it's vanilla extract. It sits innocently on the shelf, but lately that tiny bottle has been hitting grocery budgets harder than almost anyone expected. Here's what most shoppers don't realize. Nearly 80% of the world's natural vanilla comes from a single, extremely vulnerable region, Madagascar. And vanilla isn't a fast-growing crop. It's an orchid that must be hand-pollinated, and it takes 3 to 4 years before a plant produces its first usable bean. That means one destructive storm doesn't just ruin a single season, it wipes out years of future supply in one blow. Unfortunately, that's exactly what's been happening. Madagascar has been repeatedly hammered by tropical cyclones, torrential rains, and flash floods, destroying thousands of hectares of vanilla farms. Other growing regions, like Comoros and Uganda, simply don't have the capacity to make up the difference. For years now, the global market has been sounding the alarm. Natural vanilla is becoming one of the most expensive flavoring ingredients on Earth, in some cases costing more per gram than silver. Then came another hit no one expected. A fire destroyed a significant portion of U.S. vanilla reserves, wiping out backup supplies that were meant to soften the impact of poor harvests. In one moment, America lost its price-stabilizing cushion, leaving the supply chain even more fragile. At the same time, demand hasn't slowed at all. Coffee chains keep rolling out vanilla lattes and cold brews. Ice cream, yogurt, protein shakes, breakfast cereals, all of them rely heavily on vanilla. And during the holiday season, when households bake cookies and desserts nonstop, the pressure intensifies. So what shows up at the store? Bottles shrinking in size, prices inching upward, more labels quietly switching from pure vanilla extract to vanilla flavor or natural flavor. That's shrinkflation paired with ingredient downgrading, happening right in front of you. And when everything else is already more expensive, those extra dollars for vanilla start to add up fast. This isn't about hoarding, but if your household bakes regularly, makes desserts, or enjoys vanilla-flavored coffee, Picking up 1 or 2 bottles of pure vanilla extract before the next price jump is simply practical. In this situation, that small bottle in your pantry isn't just about flavor. It's about whether you plan ahead or end up staring at an empty shelf wishing you had. Number 7. Cooking oil. Sunflower, canola, olive. You don't realize how essential cooking oil is until you try to make breakfast and discover you can't even fry an egg. That's the moment it hits you. Your entire kitchen quietly depends on that one bottle. Most people never think about cooking oil until the last container is almost empty. But as we move closer to January 2026, that problem is showing up faster and more broadly than in any recent year. Supplies are tightening across multiple types at once, and the ripple effects are already being felt. Sunflower oil, much of which comes from the Black Sea region, has been severely disrupted by prolonged conflict. Facilities that once produced millions of liters each month are now running at minimal capacity or not at all. As food producers pivot away from sunflower oil, demand floods into alternatives like soybean, canola, and olive oil, categories that were already under pressure. Timing couldn't be worse. The squeeze is hitting during peak seasonal demand, when American households and restaurants use the most oil. Restaurants are scrambling to switch to cheaper substitutes just to keep menus viable. Meanwhile, snack manufacturers are quietly locking up raw oil supplies to protect their production lines. You don't see these battles happening, but you feel them when grocery aisles start showing empty spaces that weren't there a few weeks ago. And running out of cooking oil isn't like missing one specific food item. It shuts everything down. No frying, no sautéing, no proper meals. It's a small shortage that creates outsized frustration because suddenly, even simple cooking becomes impossible. This isn't about panic buying or filling your garage with supplies. But if your household cooks regularly, if you know you'll use it, keeping a few extra bottles of canola or olive oil stored in a cool, dark place isn't hoarding. It's avoiding an unnecessary headache in the middle of winter. Anyone who has stood over a hot pan, egg already cracked, only to realize there's no oil left, understands exactly why planning ahead matters. Before we move on, I'm genuinely curious. In your area, which type of oil has started disappearing first or jumping in price the fastest? Drop it in the comments. Real experiences from viewers often reveal what's happening long before official reports catch up. Number 6. Frozen vegetables. When your freezer turns into your only garden. In many parts of the country, January marks the beginning of what feels like the no-vegetable season. Grocery stores stay stocked with bread, canned meats, and frozen dinners. But fresh produce tells a different story. Greens arrive wilted, options shrink, and prices climb high enough that people pause before grabbing even a single bunch. For many households over 50 who still want balanced, healthy meals, frozen vegetables quietly become the winter lifeline. They're what keeps plates green when everything outside is buried under ice and snow. What most people don't see is how complex that $3 bag of frozen broccoli really is. Crops must be harvested on the exact right day. Processing plants have only hours to wash, cut, and prep before freezing. Freezer lines have to run continuously. Cold storage facilities can't lose power. Refrigerated trucks must move on schedule. If even one link fails, a storm knocks out electricity, drought ruins a harvest, or snow shuts down highways, freezer sections can empty in a matter of days. Many shoppers are already noticing the signs. Online grocery orders getting partially canceled. A familiar brand you've bought for decades suddenly gone, replaced by a smaller label at nearly twice the price. And the most unsettling moment isn't finding no vegetables at the store. It's opening your freezer, the place that always felt dependable, and realizing it's nearly bare. Preparing for that isn't complicated. When staples like broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, or mixed vegetables are still available and reasonably priced, adding 1 or 2 extra bags to the freezer is a simple, sensible move. For those who want to go a step further, buying fresh produce on sale, blanching it briefly, and freezing it at home works just as well. This isn't panic buying. It's making sure winter meals don't turn into nothing but carbs and canned meat, simply because the supply chain caught a cold at the coldest time of the year. Number 5. Canned soups and bone broth. Comfort food for the days you're running on empty. Anyone over 50 recognizes this moment instantly. The kind of day when your body feels drained, your throat is sore, Your hands won't warm up, and cooking feels like an impossible task. On days like that, all you want is something hot, gentle, and easy. Something that doesn't ask anything from you. That's where soup and bone broth come in. A single can turn a miserable day into a manageable one. It's food for sick days, freezing evenings, and those moments when energy is simply gone. But quietly, these comfort staples are disappearing from store shelves faster than most shoppers expect. The reasons stack up quickly. Meat prices keep climbing. Vegetables and onions cost more. Processing plants are short on workers. Even the metal used for cans has become more expensive on the global market. Add one major snowstorm that shuts down transportation routes, and an entire soup aisle can be emptied in a matter of hours. Many viewers have shared the same experience. They didn't realize they were down to their last can until they were already sick. And as we move toward early 2026, that scenario is shaping up to repeat itself, only with higher prices and fewer options. This isn't about loading your pantry with cases of soup, but if canned soup or bone broth is something you depend on when you're tired, when the weather turns brutal, or when cooking just isn't possible, keeping a small backup supply isn't hoarding. It's making sure that when you truly need comfort and warmth, it's already there waiting for you. Number 4. Baby formula, especially sensitive and specialized varieties. This isn't about cost or convenience. This is about a child's well-being. There is no item in a grocery store that creates more fear than baby formula. Adults can adjust, switch brands, or change flavors. Infants don't have that option. And for babies who depend on specialized formulas, hypoallergenic, gentle, or amino acid-based, missing the exact product they need can turn daily life into a full-blown emergency. Late winter and early January are historically the most dangerous months for formula availability. Manufacturing plants pause for scheduled maintenance. Severe weather disrupts transportation. Import regulations tighten. And when supply begins to shrink, it's always the specialty formulas that vanish first. The very ones doctors recommend for sensitive babies. One mother shared a comment that says everything. I went to 6 different stores and found one single can, and it wasn't the type my baby needs. I broke down crying at the checkout. That sentence alone explains why formula shortages are every parent's worst fear. There's one rule that cannot be stressed enough here. All decisions about infant formula must follow your pediatrician's guidance. No homemade substitutes, no mixing brands, no online recipes. Safety always comes first. But here's the reality families are facing this winter. If your baby depends on a specific formula, waiting until the last container is nearly empty is a risk you don't want to take. Keeping 1 or 2 backup containers during the cold months isn't panic buying. It's a practical step to protect your child from a very real supply disruption. As we move toward January 2026, some regions may not have enough stock for parents to choose the formula their child actually needs. If your area has ever experienced a formula shortage, share your experience in the comments. Real stories help other families prepare before they're forced into impossible situations. Number 3. Nuts and nut butters. Compact fuel that suddenly matters a lot more than people think. Nuts used to feel like a luxury item. Almonds, walnuts, peanut butter, just snacks you grabbed without much thought. But when food availability tightens, these simple items transform into something far more important. They're dense in calories, packed with protein and healthy fats, shelf-stable, require no cooking, and can carry you through an entire day when energy is low. What most people don't see is how fragile the system behind that small bag of nuts really is. California, which produces the majority of America's almonds and walnuts, is under intense pressure from extreme water shortages. Farmers are being forced to make impossible choices, either water orchards aggressively or let entire groves die. In pistachio regions, long-term drought has already wiped out large sections of orchards. Meanwhile, storms and flooding across the southern U.S. have damaged pecan farms that take decades to replace. As supply tightens, the food industry quietly adapts. Snack companies reduce the amount of nuts in their recipes. Granola bars change formulations. Higher quality nut varieties slowly vanish from shelves without explanation. If you follow viewer discussions closely, a pattern becomes obvious. People are buying extra peanut butter, freezing nuts, or hunting for more affordable alternatives. This isn't panic behavior, it's awareness. While meat and dairy prices swing unpredictably, nuts and nut butters remain one of the most reliable sources of protein, fat, and sustained energy, especially for older adults who don't always have the time or strength to cook multiple meals every day. As winter approaches and holiday baking ramps up, demand will spike even further, pushing prices higher across every category. So if nuts or peanut butter are regular staples in your household, now is the moment to make sure you're covered. Not to stockpile, just to avoid being blindsided when the market shifts overnight and those familiar items suddenly feel out of reach. Number 2. Greek yogurt and high-protein dairy. Small portions, but a critical protein lifeline after 50. For many people in their 50s, 60s, and beyond, Greek yogurt isn't just something they enjoy anymore. It's one of the simplest, most reliable ways to get enough protein. A single cup in the morning can support muscle maintenance, aid digestion, and feel far easier on the body than heavier options like meat or fish. Right now, though, the dairy industry is under a quiet but persistent strain. Feed costs keep climbing. Extreme weather is reducing raw milk production. Processing plants are dealing with higher energy expenses. Even basic packaging has become harder and more expensive to source. None of this shows up as a headline, but it shows up on store shelves. Attentive shoppers have already started noticing the warning signs. A favorite yogurt flavor is there one week and gone the next. Large tubs disappear first, replaced by smaller cups. Prices inch upward in small increases that are easy to miss until they add up. These are subtle changes, but they're unsettling for anyone who depends on these products every single day. Greek yogurt, kefir, skyr, and cottage cheese all sit in the category most vulnerable to milk supply disruptions. As the year winds down, dairy demand rises, while factories often slow production around the holidays. That's when gaps become more noticeable, especially in higher protein options. If these foods are your primary protein source, particularly if your doctor has advised increasing protein to protect muscle and bone health, this isn't just about groceries. It's about daily stability and nutrition. That's why many people choose a simple approach. When their preferred brand is available, they pick up 1 or 2 extra containers to stay ahead. With a typical shelf life of 2 to 3 weeks, yogurt is one of the safer items to keep on hand if it's part of your routine. And if shortages tighten further, having backup plans matters. Regular yogurt mixed with whey protein or temporarily switching to cottage cheese can help maintain protein intake without being thrown off by sudden market shifts. A little flexibility now can prevent a lot of disruption later. Number 1. Aluminum foil. Not food, but something your entire kitchen quietly relies on. Most people never give aluminum foil a second thought. You don't eat it, you don't crave it, and you rarely notice it until it's gone. Suddenly, roasting a turkey, covering a lasagna, baking potatoes, lining a sheet pan, or freezing leftovers becomes a problem. When foil runs out, a surprising amount of everyday cooking simply stops. From late 2025 into early 2026, aluminum foil has quietly turned into one of the most unstable items in the household supply chain. And the reasons aren't complicated, they're structural. Producing aluminum requires enormous amounts of electricity, and rising energy costs have forced multiple smelters to slow production or shut down entirely. On top of that, foil mills depend heavily on European machinery, and replacement parts are stuck in long-running global supply bottlenecks. At the same time, China has sharply reduced aluminum exports in order to prioritize its own domestic manufacturing. Less supply moving globally means tighter availability everywhere else. You can already see the effects in stores. Rolls that look the same, but feel lighter. Shorter lengths wrapped in familiar packaging. That's shrinkflation happening in plain sight. Grocery chains are reporting declining inventory, and the packaging industry has warned that foil shortages won't stop at home kitchens. They'll ripple into frozen meals, takeout containers, and restaurant supplies as well. This isn't a call to panic or to fill a garage with foil. But if your household uses aluminum foil regularly for cooking, food prep, or freezer storage, picking up an extra roll or two before winter and the start of 2026 isn't overreacting. It's making sure your kitchen doesn't grind to a halt because of one small, deceptively simple item. We don't need to clear shelves. What we do need is awareness. Look honestly at these 10 items. Choose the ones your family relies on every single week. Prepare calmly, one small step at a time, before January 2026 arrives. Because once the new year begins, every signal points in the same direction. The items that are already scarce today will be even harder to find tomorrow. So let me ask you directly. Out of these 10 items, which one has already started disappearing or climbing in price where you live? Leave your state, your city, and what you're seeing in the comments. Your experiences are what truly map the reality of this shortage.